I'm Kristen Harms with the University Heights Historical Society, and you've come to the right place if you are thinking about buying an historic home, or maybe buying an older home and fixing it up so that you could nominate it for historic designation. As Ginger is going to explain, there are a lot of benefits to having an historic home, one of which is the Mills Act, which you've probably heard about, where you can get up to 50% off, maybe more, on your property taxes. And just to give you a little background about the Historic Society, we were established in 1997 by the University Heights Community Development Corporation. And since that time, the Historic Society has helped to designate several landmarks in University Heights, including what was left of Mission Cliff Gardens, the site of the Adams Avenue Trolley Car Barn in Trolley Barn Park. We also helped to put on the National Register Annex 1 over on Normal Street, Teachers Training Annex 1, which was once part of the San Diego Normal School, which eventually moved to Montezuma Mesa and became San Diego State University. So there's a lot of great history in University Heights, and I invite you to take a flyer on our table or check out our materials. We have a number of materials that talk about our history, and our website. Our website is listed on the flyer. We have a lot of information about the history of University Heights. So I now have the pleasure of introducing Ginger Weatherford, our speaker this evening. Ginger is an architectural historian with over 20 years of experience in historic preservation and built environment consulting. She's passionate about preserving the architectural history of her hometown of San Diego. After earning a Master of Preservation Studies from Tulane University's School of Architecture in 2003, Ms. Weatherford was on staff with the City of San Diego's Historic Resources Board, and here she gained valuable knowledge in the approval process of local landmark nomination and the creation of historic districts. Since 2014, Ginger has completed multiple historic nomination reports for clients throughout San Diego County. And I'll just mention that both Ginger and Amy Hayes, who is also an architectural historian, they provide assessments of historic homes, the architecture of historic homes in San Diego. It's a service that we provide through the University Heights Historical Society. So without further ado, Ginger.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you for inviting me today, Roxanne. It's so nice to see everyone here who might be interested in purchasing a historic home. For the purposes of today's talk, the home doesn't necessarily have to be historically designated. We're just here to talk about homes that are over 45 years old and what the pros and cons of owning one. Some of them may be eligible for designation, some of them may already be designated. So then I'm going to just tell you some of the good benefits, what you need to consider before you might buy them. So preserving our old buildings and sites not only tells the full story of who we are, but it's also good for the environment. Historic preservation is the ultimate recycling. So instead of tearing something down and building a new building, then you can reuse the building that's already there. And it's better for the environment through adaptive reuse than with demolition and new construction. There's been studies that have been done on this. They've determined that almost every building type across the United States is better for the environment if you do adaptive reuse instead of demolition. Because recycling the building materials is not as good as keeping the ones that are already here. So if we were to protect historic neighborhoods in San Diego, then it creates a comprehensive, sustainable development agenda, which is something that the City of San Diego is interested in doing. So if they did nothing else but preserve the neighborhoods, then they would already have that agenda. So some of the things that people enjoy about historic neighborhoods are that each one of the neighborhoods tends to have its own little main street. So there's the walkability to shops and restaurants, and the opportunity to so cute, to meet your friends and neighbors as you're walking around, to see all the cute doggies and sometimes kitties. I'm surprised at people who walk their cats. I think it's really cute, but it's good for quality of life to be around historic properties. They provide density with the affordable housing that's already here, and it's on a human scale instead of massive things. And I'm sorry I have to say the one that's over on the corner down there.
Winslow.
That one takes up everything, and it's a good thing it's on the corner. So, but what we you know, it's good for your mental health to be around historic properties, to walk around them, to envision what it was like when the houses were first built. We used to have streetcars around here that people would use to travel around. They promote exercise, and that is good for your health. People that live in historic districts tend to be more healthy, less overweight. They feel good talking to their neighbors. People with porches, they sit out on their porch and they might talk to their neighbors. My mama's from the South, and she always talks about what you do when you sit on your front porch and you veille with the neighbors. It means to gossip. So everyone knows everything, and it's fun, it's nice. That way, if you don't see someone for a while, then you might be concerned about them, and you will go and check on them to make sure they're okay. I think that's really important. So reusing buildings keeps materials out of the waste stream. It preserves the energy and creates less air and water pollution. I think I already talked about that. So historic homes, surprisingly, people may say that they decrease property values, but they actually increase the property values. People want to be in historic neighborhoods because of all the benefits. And some people's houses that are historic are actually in better shape than new houses. Mm-hmm. So it's surprising to see, a house that was built in 1890 is still here today, and it looks like it was built yesterday. So, except that it's not, because you can tell when people try to replicate styles. As my preservation instructor told us, sharpen your eyes and you will see if something is original or an addition. So the historic neighborhoods provide character, a sense of place. The neighborhood stability and community engagement, as I spoke about, it helps to foster involvement in the community, to talk with the elected officials to see what types of laws need to be passed, or which things would be good for the neighborhood. We don't want some of the ADUs to be too high. That way it takes away from the benefits of looking at the historic properties. And so old places help us remember about the past. And it's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, the research of Alzheimer's. They do these villages where people with Alzheimer's are in a place where they know the environment because it's what they grew up with. So like people who grew up in the 50s, they create these little villages where the people feel like they're still back in the 50s. And so if we continue to preserve our historic neighborhoods, then those villages will already be here for people to be able to remember where they are and remember who they are. So the architecture is a work of art, and then you get to live inside a work of art. So the financial incentives are what California has, the Mills Act, and it was proposed in 1972 by San Diego Senator John Mills, and he authored the state law because developers wanted to tear down the Hotel Dell. And he is from Coronado, and he said no way. So he wanted to develop something to protect our historic resources. So it's the California Property Tax Abatement Program. Local historically designated properties are eligible, the redevelopment areas are not. It offsets the restoration and rehabilitation costs of maintaining and preserving and rehabbing your property. Lately I've been seeing more, usually they tell us it's 20 to 70% savings, but I've been seeing up to 83% savings. I believe it's because of the higher property values. They base it on the rentability of the property, which I think is odd, but there's a formula. The county assessor has this formula that I don't understand. But so if they're renting the properties for more money than they used to, then the property tax savings would be more than they used to. So the average savings I see from my clients are 50 to 60%. And that really helps a lot. If you have a house that is $2 million and your property taxes would have been $20,000 a year, then your property taxes would be $10,000 a year. So this one, the California tax credit is coming soon. My colleague Amy Gutierrez is a tax specialist for historic properties, and it's available in California. It will be, hopefully by the end of the year, to national and state registered properties. The residential component is not typical. Other states don't always have residential component. It's mostly for commercial buildings. So hopefully we're accepting applications by the end of this year. I found this lovely infographic about the pros and cons of having a historic home. This is the overview of it. I also have a list that I got from my clients and friends. So the pros, that it exudes the alluring beauty and charm, but the con, it may cost more to keep up. The house is full of history, but it could have potential structural problems. The potential tax incentives and benefits, but it may be difficult to find people who know how to repair the property. Some of the people here in town, they don't always know, and they may try to convince you to replace something instead of restore it. So there are lists of people who are specialized in historic properties, and luckily we have lots of them in town. So they help you keep and protect your town's history. Hi, Doggy. You're so cute. And you may have limited design choices because if your home is historically designated, and even if it's not historically designated, the city wants you to do your additions based on the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. And basically what that means is that if you do an addition, they want it to be differentiated but compatible to the historic property. So that future people like us can walk around and say, oh, that's definitely an addition. That's not from the 1920s. So some people find that very nice to have that framework to go on, but other people may not be happy about the red tape. Historic districts can protect your home's value, but your home insurance may be more. So then I have a list of the positives and negatives. These are from my clients. I'm gonna read you some of them. Maybe my computer will bring itself up.
Oh, yes, she's doing it. It's all Roxanne's fault, she gave them the
The majority of my clients and friends who have historic properties say that they love the historic details. The intricate details, the quality construction, a unique, one-of-a-kind living experience that is envisioned by an architect or builder that may still be alive. Some of the mid-century properties in San Diego County, the architects and builders are still alive. So, you know, they have real wood floors, they have the wavy glass windows. Owning a home that has been built so long ago gives the landscape time to flourish. Some of my friends have said they've never lived in a space without lush plants. They're well built and have such beautiful architectural details that you just won't find in homes that are in the suburbs. Let's see. What else do I want? Some people say that they personally would never want to live in new construction. They feel like they enjoy the old charm, the history, and the mystery of an old house. Some people have found newspaper articles inside their walls that talk about, you know, escaped prisoners or something. Some of my clients that I went to see what they were doing, there's some newspaper that were like the embossed parts where you would like print the newspaper were inside between the wooden shingles and the newer wooden shingles. It was bizarre. I don't know why anyone would cover up the redwood shingles and then put on like newer siding 10 years after the house had been built. The newspaper embossing things were from 1919 and the house was built in 1909. So it was pretty cool, but they used it kind of like to preserve the other material underneath. Yeah, so you find some really cool stuff. Some of the houses have larger than normal lot sizes. That's all. I'm sorry. I was on the wrong computer. So, let's see. And we have obviously higher maintenance costs. There's outdated electrical and plumbing, but the people who have had to do things to repair or preserve the beautiful details, like some of my clients in Mount Helix, they had to have their siding remilled because the ones that were there hadn't been taken care of well. They needed to have done new staining every 5 to 10 years, but the previous owners hadn't done that. So they needed to replace the siding with something that looked exactly like the siding that they had, because they are historically designated property within the county of San Diego. So, sometimes plumbing is prone to clogs, sometimes there's no insulation. Sometimes there's drafty windows or areas that you don't really want to have to do. But that's actually some of the parts of that helps with your health. Because if the envelope of the house is too closed off, then it's too, like, all the smells and materials just stay inside your house, and it could make you feel cooped up. And so historic homes have windows that you can just lift up, and they promote the cross breezes, and you just feel like you're invigorated by having this lovely breeze that comes through, and you feel like you want to take a walk outside. But yeah, so some people wouldn't like that, but for the people who really enjoy historic properties, they want to make sure that the house looks almost exactly like it did when it was built. I see this a lot in the mid-century properties for my clients. They want to honor the legacy of the architect or the builder by using decorative elements that would have been there. So if a house was built in the 60s, and they would use art that's from the 60s and furniture from the 60s. So it still is a lovely home to raise a family, but it's also something to showcase. Some people's houses end up on historic home tours, and they want to show it off to people to show what the possibility of having a house like this is. But some people might say, well, we don't like that because they don't have trespassing architecture enthusiasts wanting a tour of your home, and you just finished making breakfast, so you don't want to have to be like, hold on, let me take you inside, you can have a tour. But no, people used to have their homes open to the public, but since 1985, they said you don't have to have a historically designated home open to the public. As long as you can see it from the public right of way, then it is able to feel. So another thing that may not be so great is there could be unpermitted work. In the city of San Diego, all of the permits prior to 1955 have been lost, so you don't know if something was unpermitted or not. So let's see. Some people feel like you can't help but feel a different responsibility to a place, a sense that you are more a steward than owner, tasked with serving its needs before your own. I wasn't sure if that was a pro or a con. It depends on how you feel. But the homes that are architecturally significant, it's a privilege to live in them, and people enjoy being the caretakers. The homes that were built in the mid-century, most of the time, the custom-built ones were designed with views and the property shape in mind. One of my clients lives in Point Loma, and their house is on a triangle lot. And so the architect designed the house to fully take over to benefit the whole lot. So the house is a triangle, but it's beautiful, and it has views of San Diego Bay, and the breezes that come through are just so lovely. Alright, so, let me turn on the right one. So these are studies for if you were interested in purchasing it. This house is for sale. It's in what is the older University Heights. So if you look on the map, it doesn't say University Heights, but the original subdivision map.
On the
is
deeds, actually, it does say university.
Yes, it does, yes. So this house, I don't remember how much it cost, but this house may be someone who wants a home that looks historic on the outside, but they want the benefits of newer materials on the inside. This house has been fully updated. Now, some people who are purists would not like that, and they would want to restore it back to the way it was. If you're wanting to do that on your own, it could take a long time. Because if you don't have to source all the materials and figure out what it looked like, there might be not be pictures of the inside. Or you can visit your neighbors and see what their houses look like, because a lot of times houses like this were built by the same developer, and like the house 5 doors down might be really similar. So you can see what they had done. And so this house, it looks like a Craftsman because it is. But the siding has been changed. They took out the original balustrade. That's a new one. And the mailbox in the column is something I've never seen before. But it's fun. So if you wanted to be able to make this property be eligible for historic designation, it could cost more money than we want. You have to do a cost benefits analysis to see if it will be worth it to, hopefully the original siding is underneath, or maybe we have to replace it with siding that is appropriate. The windows have been changed. Those are vinyl windows. The thing that they say in preservation, vinyl is not final. The original wood windows are actually better. Sometimes they have to be fixed, but there's people who know how to do that. Like they can redo the pulleys with the ropes inside, and some people just wouldn't want to change out the windows because these are double paned windows, and a lot of historic properties don't have double paned windows. They're mostly single paned windows. Unless you live in an area that was part of the Quieter Homes program, where the airplanes go over. They will replicate your windows exactly. So they look exactly like the original windows.
Wow.
Sometimes they don't even take out the frames. They just put in double or triple paned glass within the original frames. And they'll seal up any of the areas that might have some, leaks to the outside.
So what makes a house eligible to be historically designated? It has to be brought back in a very original way?
Not necessarily the whole original way. It depends on, if this house was in a historic district, it would probably be considered part of the contributing to the district if the windows were changed. So
If the windows were changed, or
Yeah.
if the windows were not changed?
if the windows were changed.
Changed
And to be
Or change
considered
back.
Change back.
in a historic district, you can't have vinyl windows on any of the street facing facades. And that balustrade would need to be taken away. But the inside of the house still has some of the historic details, like the arched openings, cove ceilings, the fireplace. To answer your question more, There's 5 major ones to criteria to show that a house would be historically significant. If it's a historic district, then it is another criterion, like the 7th one. But mostly it's, if there was an important person that lived there, or an important event that happened there. If it's important to the architectural development of the area, or there's a special elements of the engineering of how they designed the building. The style of architecture, if it's a good representation of a certain style. So like if this house was immaculate or close to, it would be a good representation of the craftsman style. Or if it was built or designed by a master architect, master builder. The city has a list of people that they have designated as masters, and those houses have to be a good representation of their work.
So does it tell you when you buy it in the contract, it's a historically designated house?
Not necessarily. Some real estate agents are not aware if the property is historically designated or not. Some real estate listings show it on there, some do not. The city of San Diego has a database that is the California Historic Resources Information System that shows all of the historically designated properties within the city of San Diego. So that only works for city of San Diego. The county, their list is not always updated. Plus it's on a spreadsheet. But, so you can just put in the numbers of the address and do a search by that, and if the property comes up and you say, oh yes, 4521, and then it lists all the streets that also have that address. So somebody could be 4521 Georgia Street or 4521 Utah Street. But so you look for Mississippi Street, and if it says it's been surveyed, which most of them have, and then it would say, oh, I could say it was contributing to a potential historic district. That would be a good one to purchase, because then when the city or neighborhood groups do historic districts, then it will be considered contributing to the district. Sometimes you have to do things to make it contributing, because if someone said, oh no, that house would be non-contributing, and then you would do the things they would want you to do to make it contribute, and then they could reassess it.
So it's almost like a philosophical assessment, like more about what people are feeling or what they've done, like someone, so like let's say there was an event there, is there criteria on what kind of event, what makes an important person versus a non-important person? Like it's kind of philosophical in that sense, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, within San Diego, like if there were a lot of newspaper articles about a person, or if they had done, if they invented something, or if they were helped to pass a law that is something that we really use today, like Senator Mills.
Some kind of public figure of
Yeah.
some kind, politician, that kind of thing.
So you create you'd have to do research and create like a full case to present then, and then the city does their second assessment, survey first and then a second assessment based on your information that you've submitted.
Yes, usually, the reports that are done to do the eligibility are kind of like being a lawyer. You have to do as much research as you can on the property to see what may or may not be something that people would think was important in history.
Look at town.
The,
So old age is not enough.
old age is not enough. So, and plus, even old age doesn't necessarily have to be old age. There are some buildings here in town that have been designated that are only 10 years old.
Oh.
So, there's a future historic.
You mean they have been designated?
They have, yes,
Yeah.
they have.
Which ones?
Jonathan Siegel has 3 buildings. There's the Mr. Robinson on Park and Robinson. And I can't remember the others right now, but there are 3 of Jonathan Siegel's designs.
And why are they historically?
Because the city decided to declare him a master architect and builder. So those buildings are representative of his work and wanted them to be historically designated.
I
It's
wanna
not
look at that. You
typical.
said Park and Robinson?
It's not typical for buildings that are not 45 years old to get a historic designation, but there's no age requirement. So if you had a house that was built in 1985 and it was something that you wanted to put forward for designation, then you would have to make a case as to why it should be considered.
So then if it's historic, you can never tear it down.
That's not true.
Okay. Just wondering.
Sadly, you can get a site development permit that would say, they would have to take away the designation of the property, to have to go in front of the city council, and the city council would have to decide if they're gonna take away the designation. And then the Mills Act would have to finish it out its term. It renews indefinitely every year for 10 years until you cancel the contract. So if your house was up with the Mills Act and you wanted to tear it down, you'd have to have a really good reason why you wanted to tear it down. The best thing that in preservation, they try to figure out, is it possible to do adaptive reuse instead of demolition? So you have to do the environmental impact report to say, here's all the different possibilities. We preserve this section of the house, or we only preserve this part, or we keep the whole thing and we incorporate it into the project that we have. So there's a lot of places in North Park or downtown where the historic property remains, but they have added on to it to do condos or other things.
But everything dies at some point, right?
No. I don't believe that. Historic buildings have been here for longer than a lot of the other buildings in town. There's ones that were built in the 1700s are still here. The Mission in Mission Valley is still here. That was built in 1768 or something. The people who own it and maintain it have been making sure that it survives. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that building is gonna still be here in another 200, 400 years. I mean, look at all the properties on the East Coast. Those houses there have been built in the 1600s or the 1500s. They're still there. People love to live in those houses. It's where all the art and culture of the city is. It's where people like to go to restaurants and go to shops and talk to their neighbors. They feel a sense of pride by having living in a historic property, maintaining it for the future. So another, this property, if you like, new, this one's all done. However, there are some things that are a little odd. The bathroom, I don't think it would be easy to get into that shower with that cabinet right there. So, like, sometimes there's odd things that happen when a bathroom that was supposed to be a half bath, someone decided they wanted it to be a full bath. So they add a shower. And so then sometimes you have to deal with that, you know. If you don't like it, then you have to tear it out and try to do it again. And if this is not your style, then you also would have to get rid of all and try to restore it back to the original. So that's, you know, that's pretty costly. Or you can live with it like this. It's beautiful. It's just not, it's not historically appropriate for the property. But some people like it. So this house is also in University Heights. It's more intact than the previous one. It appears to have been going through restoration, and they weren't able to finish. So these are the original floors, the original windows. Some of them have been replaced, but a lot of the original windows are still there. The kitchen has been redone, and then I wanted to point out this floor because the other floors in the house, they had already redone, but this one is still needing to be done. So there's, you know, the possibility of work that would still need to be done on the property. But this house would be really good for someone who wanted to purchase a house that wasn't already historically designated, but it could be historically designated. And so then they'd be able to apply for those, the Mills Act, and for the property tax abatement, to help pay for maintenance and work overtime. That's all I have. If y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So do you consult in like, telling people about whether or not, they can designate their home? Is that something that you do, that they can contact you to do that work?
Yes, I currently have 13 clients. My list is very long. I don't have any availability until 2026. It's something that a lot of people in San Diego are really interested in doing. I have been doing it on my own since 2014, and I think all of the properties that I've submitted have been historically designated, if that's what the client wanted. I have done some where I'm doing assessment on the building because it has had too many alterations, and they wanted to get a permit to add on or to demolish it. I don't like doing those, but sometimes you gotta pay the bills. So
Did you used to work for the city?
I did, back in 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, I was technically an intern, even though I was already had my master's in preservation studies. They were on a hiring freeze, so they wanted me to come work there, and I could only work for a year because that's how they did their internship program. But yeah, it's you know, I am familiar with all of the planners in San Diego, all of the consultants in San Diego, a lot of the people who do the work, you know, the people who specialize in windows or floors or any of of the things that would need to be done to a property, I can recommend any of those people. Can also do consulting on if something that you wanted to do to the property, if it did comply with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties.
I have a question about the Secretary of Interior, the standards. So when you have an older house and you're doing an addition to it, the standards make you make the addition not match what's there.
Yeah.
And I'm an architect and that drives me nuts. Because I'm like, if I'm doing an addition to a house, I want it to look
Match.
exactly
Yes.
like the beautiful old house that
My son is.
that it's
going
attached
through
to.
the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's really, it drives me nuts, and I know that the city is really, not super harsh on that, like they've made me, on projects do, like the window mullions, like in that one photo, like let's say there's 6 little panes at the top. They'll say, okay, instead of doing 65, and then that way it's different. Like, I've had them tell me that before, which is, it's like, really, what difference does that make? Or the siding is the one that really makes me mad. It's
Yeah.
like, if you have 3-inch siding, why does the new siding have to be 4 inches? Or like, why can't we just do the same so that it all blends together? And, why do you have to be able to tell 50 years from now, like, what was original and what was not? I don't know. Because to me, it seems like it would change the fabric of the neighborhood if you see all these additions and things that don't match. Whereas if you want that historic look, that you would want everything to look, Yes, right.
Yeah, but they have a design review, committee in the city, and if you have any things that you wanted to do to the property, then they will give you suggestions on ways that it could still be differentiated but compatible. So like you say, like if you had, shingle siding on the original house, that if you did vertical or horizontal siding on the addition, then that would be the differentiation. So it would still look historic, but people will be able to tell. I mean, really only people who are like me and Amy.
Yeah.
This is a federal program that serves all of the United States. If the local government says that's what they want the people to do, they go based on those suggestions. The suggestions are kind of left up to interpretation. So it just depends. I mean, like you said, like a window that could look almost the same as the one, but it would be different. I don't know why. Like it's not like it's like the people wouldn't know, because if the permits have been all in order, that where the addition is. Because any new work that's done, if your house is historically designated, the new square footage is not included in the equation for the Mills Act savings. So,
So they want it to be visible in some way, so you can tell where the new part, even though you
Yeah.
have to look very closely, but they want it to be a little different, so you cannot make it look like it was all original.
Like, do tax assessors, they don't necessarily
Yeah.
come into your home to look at the inside and make sure your square footage
Right.
is good, they just look at the
They
outside.
just, yeah.
So
they,
maybe,
yeah, they used to, I think they used to go inside though, because, there's residential building records, although some of the notes say that no one was home, so they weren't able to go inside. So they kind of have to estimate what they think the floor plan looks like, so based on the footprint of the house, I've seen that multiple times. But I really don't know, Amy,
They
I'm
have-
sorry, do you know?
They have a building record.
Yes.
And so it's usually 2 pieces of paper that you get from the assessor, and only the building owner can get it. And the first page it's like a spreadsheet that's handwritten with details of the property, like the finishes and the and then the next sheet is just like an outline of the house with some dimensions.
Yeah.
So that's like, and it's old, and so that's like on file. And then when you submit plans for an older house, older than 45 years, you have to submit a copy of the building record so that they can see what was on record, and then they can tell if there was stuff added without permits, or you know what changes were done to the property.
Well, and we also have the fire insurance maps, the Sanborn fire insurance maps. They show the building footprint as well. So those only went up to 1956 for parts of San Diego. So you take the building record, which usually they still did assessments up until the 70s. Mostly the 50s to the 70s is when they were doing those assessments. So you take the footprint of that assessment along with the footprint of the Sanborn maps, and then the aerial views, which is how I do it unless I'm at the property, to see what additions have been done. And then you can look the city's website to see if there are permits on file already for those additions. Sometimes they're not. And if you want to get historically designated and the addition would have needed a permit, then you have to apply for a retroactive permit. Because the Historic Resources Board won't look at any properties that have unpermitted work.
Ginger, can you briefly describe, because everybody may not be aware of the process for submitting a nomination at the local level for a home?
Within the city? Or
Yeah,
okay.
within the city.
Because all my other
I
ones
know,
are different.
City of San Diego, not San Mateo.
The city of San, no, I mean like, yeah, the county. So since we're talking about University Heights, then it is the city of San Diego. So, an individual homeowner or a consultant that they hire can write a historic resource report. That's a lot of words. They have guidelines on the website that show which elements need to be included in this report. Once you turn it in, they now have a system in place where you submit it online. It's done through the Acelia online permitting system, even though historic nomination is not a permit, but that's where they put it. So you submit the application, and then a few months later, they will let you know if the application is complete, and they will give you an invoice for the nomination fee. As of July 1st, the nomination fee has increased to $3,300 something. I don't remember. It used to be 1,100 something. They hadn't increased the price since 2008 or 16, I can't remember. Anyway, so once you submit the invoice and the payment is all in place, it can be anywhere between 8 and 15 months before the city will let you know if they've given you a hearing. So, and lately I've been getting a lot of ones where they say I need a recheck is required, because they're being more strict on what you put in your report. I mean, the house that was designated earlier this year, a report that I wrote like last year or the year before, they went ahead and did it without any questions. But then I've been having ones where they're like, oh, we need more clarification on this. I said, oh, okay, but I did exactly the same stuff. So, been informed that they are more strict with consultants than they are with homeowners. But a lot of homeowners choose not to write their own reports because they actually finish theirs. And since the process takes so long to get through, so like say you turn it in, wait, what am I sure? One I turned in last July. They recently told me that I needed a recheck. And then, so a hearing would have been given in August of 2014. But because revisions were required, now the hearing is next week. Yay. So once the property goes in front of the board, the city staff will present their staff report to the board. So that one of the planners will write a recommendation. So they go through the consultant's report or the homeowner's report, and they determine if what they put in there is accurate. So they kind of have to, they're like forensic accountants, you know? Like, oh, are all the permits in place? Are all the you know, all the information about the owners, are they all in place? They want to know about who lived there, who owned it, you know, what permits have been done, what changes have been done to the property over time. So then when it goes in front of the board, and they may or may not designate the property, hopefully they do. But once it's done, if it's been designated, say the property was designated this year, as long as it's done by the end of this year, then you can apply for the Mills Act of January 1st to March 31st of the next year. So like for people who are getting their houses designated this year, they can apply for the Mills Act in 2025, first 3 months. Then when that goes through, they make a contract with the city and the homeowner, and it can build a 10-year plan on what parts of the house you want to, what you're gonna improve, what you're gonna maintain, or you know, you have to have a list. And that list gets recorded with the Mills Act contract with the county of San Diego. And then the next year is when the taxes will change. It's quite a long process within the city of San Diego, but it's definitely worth it if you are purchasing a house that has really high property taxes. Some people don't think, you know, if their house is under Prop 13, their property taxes are low, so the Mills Act wouldn't benefit them.
I have a question. If you have a house that does have the Mills Act, is it hard to do an addition to it?
You just have to go through the same process as everyone else that wants a permit on a
Okay.
45-year-old house.
Are there more restrictions
Yeah.
for, yeah?
Once it's considered a historic resource, like any change, even things that wouldn't typically require a permit, like a shed less than 100 square feet, now requires a permit and review by the Historic Resources Board.
But that's the case for anything over 45 years old. If they consider the resource a potential historic resource, then it still has to have a permit. Because one day someone might want to historically designate it, and then the permit, like, some of my clients, they were told they didn't need a permit to change the stucco on their house. Someone had done the stucco in a wrong texture, and so they wanted to put it back to the original texture, which is a smooth stucco, it was a Spanish colonial revival house. And they didn't have a permit on the stucco. And so in order to go in front of the board, they had to get retroactive permit for the stucco. So anything that wouldn't require a permit for houses that were built after 1980, definitely needs a permit for any houses that are built prior to that.
Amy, will you also introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Amy Gutierrez. I'm an architectural historian, like Ginger. The area that I work in is a little bit different at the moment. I work with historic tax credit projects. So I work for a company called Ryan LLC, which is actually a tax consulting company. And so we deal with the federal historic tax credit program and then various state tax credit programs as well. The state of California does have a credit program that's coming online. It was signed into by Newsom, I think, in 2019, but it hasn't actually ever gotten up and running yet. So we're very excited and anxious for that to move forward, hopefully by the end of this year. But as Ginger mentioned, what's great about the state tax program is that it will have a residential component, which is unlike a lot of other state programs. So if you have for the federal historic tax credit program, it needs to be an income producing property. And so for the state program, it could be a commercial income producing property, but there's also a little component for residential as well. And then a lot of times you can stack the federal HTC with the state HTC program. And then you can also get Mills Act on top of that potentially as well. So, and I too live in a Mills Act home, and we'll be doing an addition in a couple years, so we'll see how that goes. But it's it can be a little challenging with permits, I'll say. So I mean, there are ways to skirt around some things, but you need to be careful. And then you have to come up with your rehabilitation program and stuff. So, but yeah, so I just kind of work in a little bit of a different area than Ginger does, but we both kind of come about it from the same avenue.
Can I mention that if you're interested, Mission Hills Heritage, we're having our home tour on the 28th. We have 8 houses that were built, mostly we're doing master builders, so if these are familiar names to you, Rigdon, Irvin, Melbourne, Pearlmore, Schreiber, if you're interested. And 2 of the houses have ADUs where they've taken their carriage house and converted it, and it looks very compatible. So if you're interested, you might have fun seeing that. And one of them has got the original wallpaper from the 18th, and she's been cleaning it with a toothbrush.
Wow.
Get it back up, and some of the houses have only had like a couple of owners, even though they're over 100 years old. So the gumwood, the woodwork is just phenomenal.
Gumwood, if I understand it, is extinct. It's kind of like mahogany. There's no more. So,
Right.
so these homes with their gumwood are the only places that you can actually find gumwood.
Well, and actually one house, they discovered that the columns had been taken out, which you can kind of tell sometimes by the floor looks different, or there's something in the ceiling. And so she had columns made to go back in there. So there's lots of fun things.
Yeah,
so.
that's a preservation purist. I like that. Want to restore it back to the way it was when it was first built.
Yeah.
But with modern conveniences as well.
Do you guys have a substitute for gumwood, like what you would suggest to replace it?
I don't know. I mean, you'd
Do you
have
want
to
an
ask somebody.
answer to that?
Yeah.
Our William Van Dusen is going to retire in part. He's the most master woodworker around, and he's actually going to be at one of the houses doing some wood.
Restoration?
Yeah, it's answering questions about wood
Awesome.
and that, and in fact, he
Okay.
restored the door. Well, 2 of the houses have wonderful stuff that he's done.
Awesome.
I'm sending you this.
You know, to match,
Okay,
trying
thank
to
you.
match it. The one house that's, I call it the bonus house, it's the one that's done the front of the house is period, and then you go through and the back of the house has been all modernized. It's historically designated, and she's been able to match the wood, all her gum wood with other wood.
Amazing.
Yeah, but it was, I'm not sure it's gum wood, but it matches. It's very impressive. So please come out.
Okay.
Well, there's ways to also do faux finishes on wood to make them look like historic wood.